All right, 4:03, I think it's time to get underway. So I'd like to kick off by acknowledging country and just acknowledging that I'm calling in from Wurundjeri land today, and that everywhere around this continent, wherever we're joining from, we're all joining from unceded Aboriginal land. And I'd like to thank and acknowledge the elders of all First Nations for looking after this country since the Dreamtime. And our intention here at CEA is to also look after that country and to restore a safe climate for all of our current and future generations. So I know some of you will be new to Climate Emergency Australia. So just to give you a quick little intro, we are a network of councils around the country who have declared a climate emergency. My name's Sally McAdams. I coordinate CEA, and you can see my contact details there on screen, but you'll also hear a lot more about how to connect with us over the course of the webinar. And I'll just say as well that there'll probably be lots of questions that come up today. So do put them in the chat because we will have some focused Q&A time. Or put up your hand if you've got something really burning that we need to address before we go further. Welcome to everybody who's just joined. All right, so what are we doing here today? So our purpose today is for you guys to find out about governing in the climate emergency, to get a little bit of a taste of what the training is like, to get your questions answered, and to connect with us, Climate Emergency Australia, and other councils here today. So in just a moment, we'll get into some of the details around the training. We'll watch a little introductory video, it's about 7 minutes long. And in there, you'll hear a little bit from past participants and some of our guest speakers on the course. And then we'll also hear live, hopefully, from a couple of past participants as well. And then we'll have a good chance to get your questions answered. And if we get time at the end, we'll do a little taster exercise as well so that you can get a real sense of what the training feels like. Again, any questions, just pop them in the chat for now. Hopefully they'll get answered along the way, but if not, we'll come to them in the Q&A. So what is governing in the climate emergency? Well, it's an inspiring course which will act as a catalyst to action, according to Councillor Prapti Mehta from the Shire of Mundaring in Western Australia. She was one of our pilot participants earlier this year, and you'll hear a little more from her later on. Why would you want to do this course? Well, it's to expand your climate leadership. So it's really for local government leaders who are looking to push the envelope and take their leadership to the next level. It's about deepening your understanding of what it means to govern well during the climate emergency. It's all about applying that climate emergency lens, which you're going to hear about multiple times today. And it's about understanding climate risk and the role of local government in managing it. And I know that there are lots of new councillors here today from New South Wales and from Victoria, and even from earlier in this year, perhaps from Queensland. So this is really to help you get up to speed on what are the roles and responsibilities of local government in this area. It will help you strengthen your council's climate emergency response, and really importantly, it's going to connect you with peers from around Australia. And this is one of the things that we heard back from our participants was really crucial, that peer learning. And just to illustrate this, I guess, I wanted to show you a little map of where the first cohort came from. So you can see they were scattered all around Australia, but we would love to have more representation from outside the Eastern Seaboard. So how does the training work? Well, it's all online. It's 4 sessions over just over 10 hours, and that's spread across 7 weeks. So it's basically like once a fortnight you have a couple of hours session. The first one's a little bit longer. So it's spread over late February into early April, and it's a live interactive video conferencing format. So it's not like self-paced learning where you go in and you do some modules and some exercises and some quizzes. There is some pre-reading and some homework in between sessions, but the crux of it is these 4 interactive sessions where you're interacting with your peers, with the facilitators, and even with guest speakers as well. Excuse me. So in those sessions, you hear from the expert speakers, we've got discussion time, we've got guided interactive activities. Hopefully we'll get a chance to try one of those later today. And the focus is really on transformational conversations and action learning. So it's not about trying to memorize a whole lot of content. It's really about getting that crucial key information and then trying to apply it straight away with the support of the whole group. Welcome to those of you who have just joined. Still got people joining, so welcome everyone who's just joined. We've just gotten underway, and this is, of course, being recorded. So if you want to catch up on anything you missed, you can. So just to let you know where this sort of fits in the scheme of things. So this is module 1, and this is the one that we piloted earlier this year. And the idea of module 1 is bringing together leaders from around Australia to go through this climate emergency training together. And then the idea of module 2 is actually taking that back to individual councils. And we're hoping to pilot that next year as well. So if you're interested in potentially having this methodology taken and tailored for your council, get in touch with me. Then module 3 is taking it even further, so beyond the leadership team in your council and into all of the teams and divisions. But yeah, right now we're focusing on module 1, which is getting this mixed cohort of leaders together. And so why are we taking this particular approach? Well, we surveyed our councils last year and then again this year. There was a very consistent message that came back, which was that training for senior leaders was the #1 capacity building priority. And I can completely understand that. Having worked in local government for a long time, I know that having support from the top and having that really confident leadership from the top is absolutely essential for any kind of transformation, any kind of organisational change. We also believe that you know your councils and your communities and that you're committed to addressing the climate emergency. We also know that no council has yet cracked full climate emergency mobilisation, and there are reasons for that. There are barriers, there are missing links, but that's something that if we work on it together, we can address and resolve. And so that's part of the point of the training, is actually bringing us together to do that transformational work. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to reshare with a short video. Just bear with me for one moment. All right, so let me know if you cannot, actually, sorry, let me stop that again. Let me know if anybody can't see or can't hear, do yell out, because I can share a direct link for you in the chat if that's the case, but let's give this a go. Everybody seeing and hearing okay? My name is Sally McAdams and I coordinate Climate Emergency Australia. We're about to hear from a number of speakers very briefly about local government action in the climate emergency and about how Climate Emergency Australia can help you to strengthen your council's climate emergency response.
My name is Anjali Sharma. I'm 19 years old and I am a law student. And for the last few years, I've been calling on the government to acknowledge that they have a duty of care to young people to protect our health and well-being from adverse climate impacts. The policies that are being debated and passed in Parliament today are the ones that will craft and shape our future. And currently we are up against one that looks to be increasingly unlivable as we face the threat of climate impacts increasing in frequency and in severity. We know that the cost of this will be borne by my generation and generations to come.
So the critical messages, in summary, and the critical actions is zero emissions at emergency speed within a decade is the crucial time frame. The second is that Earth is clearly already too hot and large-scale carbon drawdown is vital. The third, and we're seeing it now, is that damage is and will become more dangerous before long-term solutions are effective. So fourth, a safe means of immediate cooling is critical to protect people and nature, which may be summarised as reduce, remove, reflect and repair.
When councils say to me, we can't afford to manage climate risk, I say back to them, you can't afford not to. Councils are legally liable for managing climate risk, especially in the context of a world that is changing. We know that history is not a valid analogue for the future, and so council need to develop adaptation solutions and implement strategies to build systemic resilience to respond to the threats of climate change that are happening today and also be prepared for the future.
What does climate justice mean for me? It requires councillors and influential people across government and bureaucracy to decolonise their thinking. Look at the history, the effects of colonisation, cultural context relating to the local area or the region, and also to allow First Nations and Pacific Island peoples to lead in the design and implementation of climate emergency policies.
Just after we made our climate emergency declaration back in 2016, and there was a huge amount of public interest and a lot of social media, I think we then had that moment of, oh wow, okay, we actually have to do something with this now. We've given ourselves this pretty big mandate to take action and effectively to look at everything through a climate emergency lens.
So the idea behind the climate emergency approach is essentially to match the problem, which is global warming, with a set of solutions that are actually going to solve the problem. So there's a few components to that. So we're looking at speed and scale, and so we're looking at an economic-wide, very fast transitions to negative emissions. So from a local government point of view, what that means is how can we take an approach where the local government's entire business is put through a climate emergency lens.
Climate Emergency Australia, or CEA, is a network of local councils around Australia who have declared a climate emergency. Our role is to advocate on behalf of our members and to build the capacity of the local government sector to respond to the climate emergency. 41 councils are currently members of Climate Emergency Australia, and they are essentially crowdfunding the services that we provide to councils all around the country. Our new micro-credential, Governing in the Climate Emergency, is a training program for senior local government leaders who want to strengthen their council's response to the climate emergency. Now, let's hear from some past participants about what they got out of the training.
Hi, my name is Prapti Mehta, and I'm a councillor at the Shire of Mundaring, which is in the Perth Hills. So when I did the training in 2024, I found it very, very interesting and extremely useful. I met a number of other councillors from various other states in Australia, and learning from them, understanding what they were doing to tackle climate change was really important. And as a result, I have been able to take back to my own council some of my ideas and some of my learnings, and also have been able to make a few changes. For example, putting in real climate change management strategies into our next strategic plan. So if you are considering doing the training, I would thoroughly recommend that you do it, because you will learn a lot, you will meet new people, and you will gain valuable information on how best to deal with climate change, not just within your area, but throughout Australia.
My name's Isabel Tolhurst, and I completed Governing in the Climate Emergency in 2024. What I got out of the course was an insight into how councils across Australia are responding to the challenge of climate change, and how through collaboration there's great opportunity to improve how we respond to support our communities and better use the limited resources our sector has. If you're thinking about doing the course, it's a resounding yes from me. You'll meet wonderful, passionate people who are dedicated to ambitious action on climate change. You'll gain skills and resources to help guide you through your council term and support your community, and have a good time along the way.
So if you want to strengthen your council's climate emergency response and tap into a network of people around the country who are already working on this so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, go to climateemergencyaustralia.org.au, where there are 3 things you can do. Number 1, make sure your council is a member of CEA. Number 2, if you're a senior leader, sign up for the next round of Governing in the Climate Emergency training. And number 3, stay in touch with us by joining our mailing list. Okay, hopefully people were able to see and hear all of that. Yes, I'm seeing some nodding heads. That's great. Just looking around to see. So we heard from a couple of past participants there. I'm hoping that, I think I just got a text message from Janet saying that she was in the car. So I'm not sure if she'll be able to join us. Do we have Martin here at the moment? There's Dominic just joining. I'm not sure if we do. So look, they may be a little bit delayed. So rather than going straight to our other past participants, I might throw over straight to your questions. Let me have a look in the chat and see if we've got any already. No, it looks like just introductions. So, and I'm just going to repeat that link for those of you who have joined later. This is where you can get all the information and you can share everything with your colleagues from this link. Amanda, you've got your hand up. Have you got a question? You able to get off mute? Amanda? Amanda might be struggling with her audio there, I think. Come back to you, Amanda. Okay, so we've got a few questions popping up now. When are the meetings scheduled for? What are the days and the times? Yes, so I have a slide I prepared earlier for that. Let me just reshare again. One moment. Oh, there's Janet. Fantastic. Janet, you've joined at a great time. We're going to hopefully hear from you in just a moment, but we're just going through a few questions at the moment. So the first question was, when are the meetings scheduled for? So firstly, I just want to say that we do have some times penciled in, but obviously once we get everybody signed up, we'll need to have a look and see whether we need to adjust that. But that's the tentative schedule there. So starting on Thursday, the 20th of February, and basically fortnightly Thursday afternoons from there. So 20th of Feb, 6th of March, 20th of March, 4th of April. They'll typically start at 1 p.m. and the first one will be a little bit longer than the others. All right, let's see what other questions we have here. Could you possibly give an example of something that someone has implemented in their council following the course and the impact that it has? Well, I think that is a perfect question to throw over to Janet. Janet, I know that you said that you were in your car. Are you able to speak at all, or are you actually driving on the road?
No, I've arrived. Thank you.
Oh, you've arrived. Fantastic.
Yes.
Great.
In the council office. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, I'm just going to see if I can find where you are, Janet, so I can spotlight you. Where are you? There you are. Let's add a spotlight. Janet, are you able to get off mute again? Yeah, great. Great, thanks. So Janet, somebody was asking in the chat, and I'll give some other examples as well, but I know that you've got some great examples of things that you did as a result of the training. Would you like to share any of that?
Yes, I would love to. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks for the opportunity. Welcome, everyone. I was really pleased that I had the opportunity to do this governance course program, and I did learn a lot. It was a small group, so I found that was really fantastic, and that you got buddied with somebody for the partner and sort of had partnership. So we then caught up my buddy. I'm from Macedon Ranges Shire Council, and my buddy was the mayor of Tweed. So because we were all over Australia as well, you bring in different perspectives. Local governments function in different ways in different areas, but we've all got the core at heart. So, and it also made me reach out as well and really delve into what we actually had at council and what were the layers and where did the strategies all connect, because sometimes they all come in different aspects and different ways, and then you don't sort of put it all together in the big picture and see from the lowest community-facing documents right up to the highest strategic council documents. So one thing I did do was we spoke about websites that if we're going to highlight, so my councillors declared a climate emergency 4 years ago, that it needs to be visible. So a very simple thing was, if you go to your website, have a look on and see under the search button, what areas do you have that are quick links that are frequently used or people can click onto immediately. So whether that's planning or whatever, however your council has their website, and that actually climate emergency and all the related documents that take you to those related documents in our statements, etc., should be easily accessible on your website promoting it. So when people look at the website, they see climate emergency. So I realised we didn't have that on our website. So I then put that on the portal as a request to the CEO, and that was accepted. And then within, I think, 10 days, it was up.
Yeah, fantastic, Janet. That's a great example. And we had a few councillors who similarly really took that message to heart. And I'd just like to give a quick shout out to Adrian, who's here today. He's one of our guest speakers, Adrian Whitehead, and he had done a little bit of a survey of websites of declared councils around Australia and noticed that with a lot of them, the information on climate emergency was buried very, very deep. It wasn't obvious. And so quite a few of the councillors took that away as an action to make sure that was on the front page and easily accessible. So that was a great example. See some other questions that we've got here. Oh, and sorry, actually, I will give one other example. I know that Nola and Chris weren't able to be here today, but they are from Tweed. Janet mentioned that she was buddied up with Chris, I think it was. And I know that Chris and Nola made some really big changes actually after the training, and as a direct result of being inspired by some of the other participants and seeing how they were really engaging with their community and really including their community in their kind of action planning. And in Tweed, they had a much more corporate focus up until that point. And so now they're really going through that process of engaging their community. They've got a forum for community leaders happening early next year, and they're starting to look out through their whole municipality and their whole community in terms of their climate planning. So that's another good example. Let's see, we've got some more questions popping up. Yeah, okay, so Alida has asked, she's going to be speaking about Climate Emergency Australia at the council meeting, especially for the 3 new councils and community. What are the fundamental things to say in 1 minute? Great question. I think one thing, it's not 1 minute, but if you've got 7 minutes, you could share the video that we just shared. If you've got 1 minute, I guess what I would say, the main message is, there's no need for councils to reinvent the wheel. Like, there's already lots of councils that are working together. Councils have limited resources on their own. So it's really important to tap into the network to make sure that we're working together on this, because no one council can solve the climate emergency, but, together we can make a really good start. Amanda's got a question here. Sorry about technical problems. Questions are, who's the target audience, and do attendees already have to be on board with understanding what climate change is and what action is needed? Okay, let's go one by one. So the first question, who's the target audience? So it's senior leaders. So it's councillors or elected members, they're called in some states, CEOs, general managers, directors, other executive team members. So that's who it's aimed at. Do they have to be already on board with understanding what climate change is? I think, yes, understanding what climate change is would be a very good start, and knowing that action is needed, yes. I would say those would be kind of minimum requirements, because it's really for leaders who want to push themselves to the next level. So if you're yet to be convinced that climate action is needed, you're probably not at the right place to start this course, I would say. Can we have a few examples of how council officers have promoted and offered this training to councillors, especially if climate change action isn't currently high on the council agenda? Great question. How is this training funded? Yeah, good question. So the first one around promotion. So let's see, when we did the pilot, the first thing that we did was promote it to all of our member councils. And of course, we're lucky that, our member councils tend to have lots of passionate leaders, and so we had no trouble really filling up that first cohort. But what I would say is, for the ones who are in councils where you feel like you have a, it's climate change is not top of the agenda yet. Well, that's a perfect place probably to be sending leaders to kind of get that boost. But yeah, recognise it can be a little bit more difficult. I think there's a number of ways. I mean, there's just the standard way of going up through your line of management up to your executive team, and especially for member councils, I guess. Promoting the fact that this is something that we're providing at a really affordable price, particularly for members. It's much cheaper than university training or corporate training. And how else can officers promote it? I guess sharing the video would be one way, because it's nice and quick and people can hopefully can get to see it. Also, feel free to share the recording of this webinar and all of the materials on our website, which I'll keep on sharing through the session. But yeah, like, this is not training to try to turn around or convert people who are like not interested at all. It's really for people who are already at least have a basic level of kind of interest and enthusiasm. A question about how was the training funded? Yeah, so the first round of training, so the pilot happened earlier this year. That was just CEA's project budget. So we get contributions from our members every year, and we set aside a little bit for projects, and that's what we spent our money on last financial year. This year we're trialling a little bit of cost recovery, because we'd love to make this training sustainable so that we can just keep on running it without having to use up our whole project budget every time. Yeah, so that's how it's funded. Do we have some more questions? And if not, I'll come back to Janet, because I've got some more questions for you as a past participant. But does anybody else have a question they want to ask at this point? Oh, okay, we've got another question. Is the training going to be offered a few times a year, given elections have just happened? It'll take a while for, yeah. So we chose this timing actually to try to provide something for councils, for new councillors in particular. But yes, we'd love to run it several times a year. I think at the very least we'll be running this mixed cohort kind of methodology at least once a year, hopefully more often than that. But we'd love to expand it further as well. We'd love to do other different types of training as well. But yeah, I understand for some people it'll be hard to get on board quickly, but I guess the way I would sell it to new councillors is this is a great way to kind of get up to speed quickly and expand your network quickly. Arabella says, looking forward to signing up and sharing this with fellow councillors. Yay, thank you, Arabella, that's great. Amanda, potential cost per attendee going forward. Okay, let me just let Tim in. Yeah, so again, this is a slide I've prepared earlier. One moment. Sorry, this I'm sharing in a special way that takes a little extra moment. Just one moment while that loads up. Okay, so costs. All right, so yeah, here you can see a bit of a breakdown of the costs, and this, by the way, is on the flyer. So if you've got access to that, that's all there. So the good news for member councils is that there's a really great group rate, which I would recommend above everything else. That's the $300 for up to 3 participants. So you're looking at only $100 each if you're able to get 3 people along. Also for members, if you sign up this side of the new year, so anytime up until the end of the day on December 31st, you got access to the early bird rate as well, and that's so if you're just sending one person along, really good idea to sign up before then. For member councils after that time, for an individual, it's $250, and for non-member councils, it's just a flat rate of $500. So if you are a small council, it's very much worthwhile considering signing up as a member before registering, or don't even worry about before registering, just before we invoice you, because yeah, especially if you want to send along a little group, it would probably be very worthwhile. Arabella asked, have any councils rejected paying for councillors to attend? Oh, that's a good question. So I haven't heard of that so far, but having said that, as I mentioned, the The first round was cost free because it was the pilot and or something new that we were training, and so we just funded that ourselves. But what I would say is that particularly if you're a new councillor and you haven't yet sort of tapped into the learning and development side of council, generally most councils have a learning and development fund. And so it might be for individual councils or it might be a pool for all of the councillors. But if you get in touch with your councillor support unit or even your CEO, somebody should be able to help you know how you can tap into that training budget. You shouldn't have to reach into your own pocket. Let's see, have we got any other questions at the moment? Just seeing if I've missed anything here. Okay, in that case, Janet, I'd like to go back to some questions that I had for you. Let me just pull up my... Oh, got another question from Arabella. Will the slides be shared? Yes, absolutely. I'll share everything that we shared today. So yeah, Janet, I wanted to ask you, so you've already shared a little bit about what you've done since the training in terms of, you know, really making the communications more prominent around climate emergency. But I also wanted to ask you just more generally, what were some of the benefits that you got out of it, or what were some things that you learned?
Thanks. Yes, the benefits, I've been on council 8 years, so this is, I'm going to my 3rd term. And what it was good is that for me, what was beneficial for me was, as I said, it made me spend some time to reflect back and sort of do a tree and then see over that time, because we've done a lot of actions in the last 8 years, to map it out for me exactly where we were sitting and where all the strategies connect and at what level they're focused, because we've got community action plans right up to, you know, council zero net emissions target strategies, etc. So that was good. And also you're encouraged to, so I was asked if I had permission to speak to the manager of this area of our environment and sustainability. And then we spoke about, we both completed an assessment of what council had, which was really good. That was pre-mapping and then we discussed it as well. So there were some things that I said, I forgot that we were doing this, or I didn't realise we were doing this. And so that got me back onto the same page as the council environment team. And then I was able to share, I'd hear from other participants and I think, I'll go and have a look at their strategy. So you actually learn a lot. You do need to commit some time to get the most out of it, to have prepared that, to see where you're at and get it all in your mind. And then you can be open and then you're quite constructive and you can participate really well in the group, because everybody's at a different level, or they're doing things in a different way, or they might have a policy or a strategy that, like for instance, not a lot of people I found, as you mentioned in Tweed, had a community level action plans. And so I was able to explain about that and refer people to our action plans as well. So it's just more, it's a good reflection time to get it all in your mind, because then you can set the course. You can make some projects and say, well, I'm actually going to focus on this, or I'm going to touch base and see. Now we've got a big week expo coming up in March next year, and I've already spoken to them about what's the name of it, how we're going to frame that. So
yeah, awesome. Great, thank you, Janet.
If you get in, it's like anything. If you put in the work and you read up and you listen and follow things up, contact some of the participants for a bit more information, then you will be very rewarded, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you, Janet. And I might come back to you for another question in a moment, but I can see that Arabella has her hand up. Arabella, do you want to take yourself off? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes, and Janet, thank you for raising that, because I was wondering, you know, I think Glen Iris City Council is fairly advanced in its climate emergency strategies and plans, but I don't know where it sits in the spectrum. So it's good to know that we'll be able to push things further from where we are at. We're not necessarily all starting at the same starting point. So thank you for that. But also on that point, if we identify strategies or ideas that Climate Emergency Australia isn't promoting, are you open to new ideas from council attendees? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking for good news stories and good strategies. We actually we put a lot of effort into making sure that we collate all these resources that come in from all our councils and have them available in our base camp. So we have more than 500 officers who tap into that base camp, and they're constantly asking each other, have you got a policy on this? Have you got a strategy on this? How do I do this? How do I do that? So there's constant sharing of those kind of resources. So we love getting new stuff from councils.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no worries. Janet, I had one more question for you, which you've already touched on a little bit. You were kind of saying that, you know, you get in what you get out what you put into the course. But I was wondering if you had any other recommendations for people, either about, you know, if they're humming and hawing, should I, shouldn't I? Or if they're thinking, yeah, I want to, but how do I get the most out of it?
Thanks. I think the connection, so asking the CEO if you can connect with the person that's driving it in through council, the council officer, if you're a councillor, for instance, whether it's the manager, I think that they can also help you get the perspective or like I said, realise little key programs we're doing or things. You know, we always hear the general high level, but sometimes that's good to bring home just how much you don't realise actually how much you're doing. So I found that really beneficial, that connection with whichever officer is leading it within, you know, hopefully it's going through all the departments, it's not anyone, but generally there's one or a team that's leading it in councils. So having that connection for the start, and that's where I got the most out of it, and then doing the self-reflection and mapping it myself. The questions, there's some questions that they'll ask, what do you have, what are your strategies, what's this, and it makes you go back on and look up your website and Google up and see exactly where you have and when we introduced it, what actions have we had from it. For instance, we have our environmental report, we table every year the actions that we've achieved from that report. So that's something to say in all your reports or strategies. Are you actually tabling them at meetings to make them, the public more, the community more aware of what you're actually achieving? So some we did, and some, you know, we have a very strong biodiversity strategy, and I realised when I was talking about that, not a lot of councils have a strong biodiversity strategy. So just comparing and sharing, but knowing what you actually have, because you can't move forward if you don't know where you're already at.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Janet. Janet's mentioned a couple of times this self-assessment that all our participants did. So just to explain that a little bit more, we have a checklist that we've consolidated from a range of sources. And basically the participants go through that checklist. It's just a spreadsheet, and you kind of check where you're up to. And that's the opportunity, like Janet was talking about, to actually connect with your staff. And so all of our participants, I think, were able to actually either sit down with or, you know, communicate with their staff, you know, via their CEO or directly to, yeah, kind of do that self-check process of where are we up to, and have we done this, have we not done this, and is there a reason why we couldn't do it this way? And so that checklist is a big part of the methodology, and that's actually available on our website now. It's in the process of being updated, but yeah, that's something anybody can tap into right now if they want to. Great. Okay, I'm going to check in and see if there are any more questions, because if not, we'll keep on going. But let's just see. Has anybody else got any questions before we move on? All right, I'm going to allow you to step out of the spotlight, Janet. And I'm going to share again. And just bear with me for one moment. All right, so and of course, if more questions come up, we'll get back to them. But it's time to do a little exercise so you can get a sense of what it feels like to be in the training. So this one is called the SWOPS assessment. So unlike the great big checklist that we just talked about, it's a more of a high level kind of assessment. You've probably all heard of the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. This one's a little bit different. It looks at your superpowers and strengths, your weaknesses and blind spots, opportunities to transform your approach, potential partners in your transformation, and support needs. So this is all thinking about your council's climate emergency response. So what have you already done? What have you not yet done? What have you not yet started? What's your council's also general approach beyond climate? Maybe you have other really relevant superpowers or weaknesses. So just take a moment, and you can write this on your phone or on a piece of paper or in the chat if you want to. Just have a little think for yourself. We'll give you a few minutes to do this. Don't worry if you don't get all the way down the list, but at least see if you can do your superpowers and your weaknesses. Meanwhile, I'll read a question from Erin. I'll let people think, and then I'll come back to your question, Erin, in a moment. Don't overthink it too much. Keep it high level. So I'll just give you one more minute. And if you feel like you've already covered off on climate, make sure that you think a little bit more broadly. Maybe think even about your whole municipality. All right, while you're finishing that off, I'm just going to address this question from Deputy Mayor Erin Foley. So Erin, you asked, do you teach your participants how to measure the impacts of their changes? So do you measure in carbon footprint, tonnage sent to landfill, renewable energy use, etc.? So short answer, no. This is not so much of a technical course. It's much more high level, and it's much more about your leadership. But what I would say is that you've probably got staff who are well across all of that, and I think it would be totally possible to ask them to assess, going through that checklist, okay, if we made this change, what potential impact would that have in terms of our carbon footprint? What impact would that have on our tonnage sent to landfill? So I think all those things are totally possible to figure out based on the changes that you might make, but it doesn't necessarily have to be you figuring that out and crunching the numbers yourself. Hope that answers that question. Okay, so I'm going to call on some people. In fact, Janet, I might call you back first if you're all right with that. Janet, I know that you've done this whole process before, but did you come up with anything in terms of where you're at the moment, in terms of your superpowers and strengths? And you mentioned biodiversity before, but anything else you want to mention?
No, no. I think only the strength is knowledge of what you have and to continue to drive it. So I think that would be my strength, is over these 8 years seeing the journey, but having the enthusiasm to continue to drive it.
Yep, great. Okay, and maybe just staying with you for one moment, Janet. Can you think of any weaknesses or blind spots that you still have left to address?
Yes, I definitely don't have the time to have done as much research and council. There's so many things to attend to, so I probably don't have the time, I don't think, to be doing as much as I want to.
Yeah, I think that's something we can all relate to, and I think most councils can relate to the fact that we often feel like we don't have enough time, we don't have enough resources. So yeah, that's definitely a weakness for a lot of us, and one of the really strong reasons why collaboration makes a whole lot of sense. Okay, well, let's see if there's anybody else who is going to be brave and share some of their strengths and superpowers or weaknesses and blind spots. Does anybody want to chime in, either in the chat or by putting up your hand or just calling out? Otherwise, I might have to call on you. Oh, Dominic, yes, you got your hand up. Tell me about it.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Look, it's a very...
Dominic, can I just introduce you?
Sure. Yeah.
Councillor Dominic King from Bellingen. He's on our executive of Climate Emergency Australia, long-time supporter. So thanks for being here, Dominic. Take it away.
Yeah. Look, I'm answering this question with very little preparation, as everyone else is, so that's always tough. Look, I think the success that Bellingen's had is that we've actually just gone to 100% renewable energy. We have a revolving energy fund that puts in more PV. We're electrifying a lot of our plant. We've got a very committed and supportive community. That's a real positive for us. And we're doing things like supporting the Great Koala National Park and the biodiversity strategy. And I think small councils, that stuff's really important. We're never going to have, it's going to take us a long time to have an electrical fleet, for example. And I know bigger councils talk about that. So I think there's many ways that you can, ensure that you're addressing the climate emergency through different measures, like having a really good biodiversity strategy and supporting a lot of stuff. I think our weaknesses are our messaging, and we haven't really got a community plan yet. We've got a council plan, but we really probably need to get a community plan up as well. And I'd say the other weakness is that, that local government is very much, you get a lot of changing staff, and we lose that corporate knowledge. That we had a fantastic sustainability manager who we lost. And also the changing councillors. So, that political stuff always makes a difference. But I think you can get around that stuff. So, yeah, very quickly, they're the things that I jotted down in 5 minutes, but there's probably a ton more.
Good on you. Thanks, Dominic. So we can kind of tell already that, if Dominic and Janet were in the same training session, they might get together later and Janet might be able to share with Dominic how they've gone about their community planning and their community mobilisation, and then somebody else in the call might be like, oh, we haven't done enough on renewable energy, how do we get there? And they might be able to talk to Dominic about that. That's kind of the point of this exercise. I can see Tim has very generously shared his assessment in the chat there. So the strengths and superpowers were framework endorsement, carbon account established, strategy review, community engagement supportive. Great. Weaknesses, EV and HR issues, car dependence, old ways and processes, ways of thinking. I think a lot of us can probably relate to that. And you're with Dominic on the, feeling a bit behind the 8 ball on the EVs. And, hopefully we'd have somebody in the session who's like, oh, well, let me tell you, we've just done our EV plan. We've transitioned our whole fleet. Opportunities, elevate in our integrated reporting framework. Yep. Potential partners are joining council. Yes. And support needs collaboration. Fantastic. Yeah, great. Tim, anything you want to add to that? That sounds really good.
No, well, yeah, kind of live in some of that at the moment, which is great. But so in a city council in Western Australia, at the City of Vincent, and so yeah, really trying to partner with our capital city in the City of Perth, and the challenge there, I think they see their context as a bit different, but yeah, we've just got to forget the invisible boundaries and see that you know, people will be driving EVs through these areas, and we need to all support one another and have, I suppose, a consistent decision-making framework to get it right and future-proof ourselves. So yeah, that was the main thing.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks so much for
you.
sharing that. Really appreciate it. Anybody else like to share anything? Just let an awkward silence build before we go on. I think there's a, you're supposed to count to 13 and then really nobody's got anything to say after 13. All right, we'll move on. So thanks everybody for sharing in that section. So I want to start wrapping up and let you know what comes next. Now, I know that a lot of you came in a little bit late or came in straight through the session, so be assured this is all being recorded. You'll be able to catch up on the bits that you missed, and you're also very welcome to share any and all of this with your colleagues. And I also want to make sure that you all know that the first round of expressions of interest, along with the early bird rate for members, will close at the end of this year. So Tuesday, 31st of December, anytime up until the end of the day that day, you can put in your expression of interest and you'll get that early bird rate if you are a member. If you are not a member, then I highly recommend considering becoming a member, and don't worry about when in the process that happens. We'll make sure that you get the right rate if you, as long as you're a member before the course starts. Also, if we still have places left in the new year, we'll of course open a second round of EOIs, but we just want to find a way to manage it a little bit. So we'll just check in at that point and see if we've got enough people ready to go. Also would recommend that if you are a member council, do take the opportunity to send 2 or 3 people or even more, because the more people that you have going along, the more you'll get out of it, the more you can support each other and bring all of that learning back to your council and have the support of your colleagues. And I'm not just talking about councillors. I know that we've had a little bit of a focus on new councillors, but experienced councillors, like Janet said, will get a lot out of it as well and be able to reflect back on all your time at council. But crucially, also executive team members. It was so great to have a couple of CEOs and a director in the room last time, because it meant that the councillors got to hear from, you know, a different role and kind of how things worked operationally, and vice versa. The CEOs got to hear from councillors on some of the, you know, political wins that they were dealing with. So would highly recommend sending a mixture of people along. If you're interested, like I said before, in some more tailored training, so if you're thinking, well, I'd like to send everybody, well, you maybe might be better off in actually just working with us and doing a tailored thing just for your council. But then again, if you want to get that cross-fertilisation, then at least send a few people along. You can connect with us through that contact page there. There's a whole range of things you can sign up for there, the general mailing list, webinars, all of that. Let's go to a question from Arabella. Just like to put this idea forward that we ignore domestic solid fuel combustion and carbon accounting, e.g. wood, charcoal, by focusing on CO2 emissions alone. Black carbon emissions from solid fuels are up to 5,000 times more climate warming than CO2. Arabella, I would be lying if I told you that I knew the nitty-gritty on that, but that sounds like something that some of our members know a lot about. And again, like I said, tapping into that network, you would have somebody commenting in no time saying, you know, what they know about that, or supporting what you're saying, or saying, hey, here's an advocacy thing that we could do together about that. And like I said before, share all of this with your colleagues. There's the flyer, there's the EOI form, there'll be the recording from this webinar, there's the little video. So if you know somebody who's not going to sit down and watch an hour-long webinar, totally fine, send them a 7-minute video. And yeah, just make sure they get access to that link. I'm going to just ask if there are any final burning questions before we say goodbye, and I'll stop sharing so we can see everybody's faces for a moment. See if I can see any hands up. Sorry, Dom, I'll stop spotlighting you. Any hands up? Any final comments, questions? Jess, thanks, Sally, for the great training. Great. Thanks, Jess. Yes, that will be fabulous. Love to have some people from Melville. All right, well, with that, I think, thank you everybody so much for being here. It was great to see you. Oh, I see Christine, hello. Good to see you. Thanks, Amanda. Great. Yeah, and as I said, of course, just contact me if you'd like to know more about any of that. And absolutely happy to have individual conversations with people about what, you know, what their particular council, their situation, or their personal circumstances, what you might get out of it. So thanks everyone for being here, and look forward to being in touch. Thanks everyone. Bye.